we're going to factor quadratics. So a quadratic always has an x squared value in it. So in this case, we're going to factor ones that don't have any numbers multiplied by the x squared, so the coefficient, the number that would be multiplied by it, would be 1. So this is the easiest type of quadratic to factor. Okay, it's going to have a bx value added on. So the coefficient, or the number multiplied by x, is called b, plus a constant. So just a number that's added on, the constant is called c. So we're going to factor this into two binomials multiplied together. So I'm going to explain what this formula helps you do in a second, but I would have you make sure you understand that you're going to have x squared plus b times x plus c. So this is what your quadratic is going to look like. We're going to identify two numbers that you can add together to equal this b value. Those same two numbers you need to be able to multiply together to equal the c value. And then we'll rewrite it in factored form as x plus that first value times x plus the second value. And if one of the values is negative, we would change the plus to subtraction. But these have to be the same numbers, like the first number in each is the same, the second number in each is the same. So the same two numbers add together to equal b as multiply together to equal c. And I'll show you, it'll make more sense when we start doing a problem. So we're going to factor these polynomials. So it's called a polynomial because there's many of the monomials. So each one of these would be a monomial or a term. Okay, so the b value is 5. Because remember, if you look back at the formula, it's set up as x squared plus bx plus c. That means b is 5 and c is 6. So we have to figure out what two numbers we can add together to equal our b value, which I said b is 5. And the same two numbers we multiply together to equal the c value, which is 6. Okay, so the easiest thing to do is, well, I'm going to look at factors of 6. Well, 6 times 1 gives me 6, but 6 plus 1 is not 5. 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. So they have to be the same numbers. So I know that 2 times 3 is going to give me 6, and 2 plus 3 gives me 5. So I found my two numbers, 2 and 3. That means that this factors to x plus 2 times x plus 3. And if I re-multiply this, I will get back to x squared plus 5x plus 6. So this is my answer. Okay, so I'm going to try another one. I'm going to go through the same exact process. So I'm going to find two numbers that I can add together, in this case to equal 7, because that's my b value. Multiply together to equal 10, which is my c value. All right, so these numbers are fairly small, so I can see that 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 plus 5 is 7. So I know those will work. So 2 plus 5 equals 7, and 2 times 5 equals 10. That means when I factor this to get the two binomials that are multiplied together, remember they're called binomials because there's two terms in each. We have x plus 2 because it's a positive 2, and x plus 5 because it's a positive 5. And this is my quadratic, or I can also call it my polynomial, that is factored. All right, so here's another one. Okay, so this one's a little different. We don't have anything multiplied by x, but we do have one x there. So I'm just going to put a 1 in front of my x. So I know that my b value is 1. So I have to figure out what plus what is equal to 1. And those same two numbers multiplied together equals, in this case, it's -6, so -6. All right, so here's where I have to think about it. I know that I'm going to have to multiply two terms together to equal a negative. That means the only way to get a negative answer is if one's positive and one's negative. So I'm just going to say right away that I know that one of these terms is going to be negative. I just have to figure out which one. Well, when I add them together, it equals a positive value. That means that my positive number, when I add them, has to be bigger in order to end up with a positive. So let's see. I know 2 times 3 could give me 6. Let's see if I can do 2 times -3 gives me -6. 2 plus -3 is -1. So that didn't work, so I'm going to switch those. 3 times -2 is -6. 3 plus -2 is +1. So I know my larger number, which is 3, has to be the positive number. 2, the smaller number, has to be negative. 3 times -2 is -6. 3 plus -2 is +1. So pay attention to that, because you do have to really identify which of the numbers positive, which one's negative, based upon what they add up to. Is the value or the answer of the ones that you have to add together positive or negative? So that means I have x plus 3 times x minus 2 for my answer. And I put -2 because we have a -2. I could put plus -2, but plus and negative is the same thing as minus, and I just want to reduce it as much as possible. All right, so let's try another one. All right, now our b value is negative. So we're going to add two numbers together to equal -7. And we're going to multiply those same two numbers to equal +12. All right, so this one I have to think about. Okay, so they multiply to equal a positive, but they add together to equal a negative, meaning I know I have to have negatives in there. If I have negatives involved, the only way to multiply them together to equal a positive is if they were both negative. So both of my numbers are going to be negative. I know that. So we have to figure out what times what is 12. And when we add them together, we get -7. So I know -6 times -2 is +12. -6 plus -2 is -8. So, well, that one didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to try again. -3 times -4 is +12. -3 plus -4 is -7. So we have -3 and -4. So if you need to write out some of the factors of your values that are multiplied together, go ahead and write them out. Okay, so this means x minus 3 times x minus 4 is x squared minus 7x plus 12 factored. So breaking it down to what we would have originally multiplied together to equal this value. So it's kind of the opposite, factoring it out. Okay, so let's try another one. We have x squared minus 2x plus 10. So what plus what equals -2? Same two numbers equal +10. All right, so if we say add together to equal a negative, multiply together to equal a positive, I know they both have to be negative. All right, so we have to get 10, we could do -2 times -5 gives me negative 10. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7. Negative 10 times negative 1 is positive 10, but negative 10 plus negative 1 is negative 11. Those are the only factors of 10. So since I know they both have to be negative, negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10. Negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. There's no other factors that give me 10. I can't multiply anything else together to equal 10. Because none of these will add up to equal negative 2. Remember, negative 1 plus negative 10 is equal to negative 11. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is equal to negative 7. I've tried every possible combination where I multiply them together to equal negative 10, but they never add up to the value that I need. That means that this quadratic right here is not factorable. So this happens occasionally. Meaning I'm not able to factor this down. And that is your answer. Okay? It only happens occasionally, so you have to make sure you go through all the possibilities of what can I multiply together and then re-add them to make sure you've tried everything before you decide that you can't factor it. Okay, so I'm going to have you try 5 problems. I'm going to zoom out so you can see them all. Like what we just did. Go ahead and go through them, and then we'll go through the answers together when you're ready. All right, so this first one, we need to add 2 numbers together to equal 4, multiply them together to equal 3. My numbers that I'm going to choose are 1 and 3. That means it's x plus 1 times x plus 3. If you wrote this as x plus 3 times x plus 1, that's the exact same thing. Because these 2 parentheses are multiplied together, you can reverse the order that they're in. Just the parentheses, just moving the parentheses themselves. Because there's multiplication here. In multiplication, you can reverse the order. All right, so the second one, we're going to have to add to get 6, multiply to get 9. So our numbers are 3 times 3 is 9, 3 plus 3 is 6. So I have x plus 3 times x plus 3. Well, isn't this just x plus 3 multiplied by itself? So if you wrote this as your answer, you're correct. But anytime you have something multiplied by itself, it's that value squared. So this is actually x plus 3 squared because it's multiplied by itself. So it's just a simpler way of writing this. And you always want to write your answer as simple as possible. So this is technically correct, just showing you the simplified version. All right, so we have to add together to equal negative 3, multiply together to equal negative 10. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And I know it's going to be, my larger number is negative. So negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. So I have x minus 5 times x plus 2 as my quadratic factored. Okay, number 4, we're going to add 2 numbers to equal negative 9. Multiply 2 numbers to equal 14. Okay, so you can say add to equal negative, multiply to equal positive. They're both negative. I'm going to say negative 2 times negative 7 is positive 14. Negative 2 plus negative 7 is negative 9. So factored, it's x minus 2 times x minus 7. And the last one, we're going to add to equal 2, multiply to equal 5. Well, the only thing I can multiply to equal 5 is 1 times 5 gives me 5, but 1 plus 5 is equal to 6. So this one is also not factorable. So I would make sure that I write out all the factors of the multiplication part. Make sure that when you add them together, none of them actually equal what you're trying to add up to, and then you can decide if it's factorable or not.